Now, if your team is starting to look a little bit of a mess going into game week 14, don't worry, I've got you covered with the ultimate wildcard draft and of course all the stats and data you need to make the best decisions this game week. Now, of course, before we dive into the team itself, we are going to take a look at the data. But, of course, if you do enjoy any of the content that you see on the channel, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, as we are trying to hit 11,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and it is only possible with your guys' amazing support. As always, I will be live for the deadline. We'll probably be going live from around 2, half 2, doing a little bit more of these early streams to kind of, get as many people in there, get people engaged. Of course, there will be team reviews and all that good stuff as well. So if you are looking for somebody that will be live a little bit earlier, then make sure you're hitting that subscribe button with bell notifications on as well, so you will be notified when I do go live tomorrow. First off, let's start off with the betting data from Rob T FPL. This, of course, is just looking at game week 14 on its own. And as you can see, it's probably going to be a bit of a wild week, to be honest. I don't imagine there's probably going to be too many clean sheets looking across the board here. Lots of decent projected goals for a lot of teams as well. Of course, it is midweek football as well. That comes with its own rotations and stuff like that. So I'm probably going to say there's going to be probably quite a lot of goals, to be honest. Manchester City, the top team for projected goals. However, I do think the betting markets may shift on that one as we get closer. Of course, Chelsea in a decent second place. I do think that is probably a really, really good fixture to be looking to invest in. Of course, not only from a defensive standpoint with 36%, but also with those high projected goals, the likes of Cole Palmer as a decent captaincy option, Nicholas Jackson as well, who's in fine form, and of course maybe some of their defensive assets, maybe a Sanchez, a Levi Colwell, somebody like that. Arsenal are also fancy to go and beat Manchester United, and I think actually from watching the United game yesterday, I wasn't overly impressed. I know they won 4-0, but Everton kind of gifted them quite a few goals. I think, looking at Bukayo Saka is definitely going to be worth it going into this game week as well. The Tottenham-Bournemouth game looks like that could be a thriller as well on Thursday, so maybe potentially considering some of their players as well. Let's move on then. Let's take a look at the 11FI data for the next 5 game weeks. Of course, if you want to go and check out their amazing website, I will leave a link in the description so you can go and check it out for yourself. Starting off first is going to be clean sheet percentages over the next few weeks. Arsenal are definitely going to be a team I would be highly recommending investing into. Currently sat third for XG conceded so far in the league. They've got a decent set of fixtures coming up, and I think it is looking very, very good that Arsenal will continue to keep good clean sheet numbers, because they are obviously, like I said, doing exceptionally well back in that column. They're also doing well in clean sheets. They're not giving up too much chances for sides as well. Decent fixtures on the horizon. It makes complete sense for me. Manchester City, I know, are quite fancied over this list, but I think the form that they're in at the moment, probably not going to be a team I'm going to be recommending to you guys. Liverpool, on the other hand, though, I am very, very bullish on this one. I think investing into this Liverpool defence could be a really worthwhile move. They're going to go on this pretty decent run after the Newcastle game, which on paper I don't think is as hard as some people are suggesting. Newcastle really, really struggling at the moment. I think they only had one shot in the game at the weekend against Crystal Palace as well. So Isak out, could be another decent clean sheet potential here. Obviously, we've got Van Dijk, Trent Alexander-Arnold as well. Alisson, I think if, he starts to make himself back fit and available as well, could also be a decent option in goal. Brighton have got some decent fixtures, but again, I'm not overly convinced by their defensive record. I know they're looking pretty good on the 11FI model here, but for me personally, I'm not too invested in their defence. Chelsea, on the other hand, I think there's some great pickups here. Sanchez and Colwell could be very, very decent long-term holds, all the way probably up until round game week 29. That is how good the Chelsea fixture run is going to be coming up. Newcastle as well, they've also got some decent fixtures that rotate pretty decently with other sides as well. So, people like Lewis Hall could be worth it, but Newcastle have been a bit woeful recently. And I do feel once we start to obviously, drill down a little bit more into this section, we are getting to the teams that aren't really keeping too many clean sheets, to be honest. And it's probably just a little bit of luck. Obviously, Bournemouth didn't keep a clean sheet, haven't kept many this season. West Ham are about to go on a decent run. Again, haven't really kept too many clean sheets. If I was to pick an asset, it probably would be Wan-Bissaka, but I don't expect him to continue scoring every single week as well. We've seen it with, obviously, a lot of people have a Nuri. His attacking returns have dried up and the clean sheets just haven't been there. Aston Villa, who are quite fancied on this list as well for the next 3, they've only kept 1 clean sheet so far this season as well. The best defence, or I would say the most valuable defence that we can get into, is probably going to be Arsenal or Liverpool over the next few weeks, because they've got decent fixtures, high percentage chances, and the way that they're defending so far this season has been stupendous. So if I was to look to obviously be investing in any sides, it would be those two for me personally. Let's move on then. Let's take a look at the projected goal data for the next 5 game weeks. Obviously City still fancied, Arsenal and Liverpool, no real shocks there. I do expect City to potentially be marginally changed a little bit within the 11-5 model. Again, they are just struggling at the moment to kind of create any real chances, to be honest, and obviously the Liverpool game exemplified that. I don't know whether that was a case of Liverpool defending extremely well and highlighting their strengths, like Virgil van Dijk, man of the match for me personally, had a fantastic game. Obviously there was the little one area he had, but everything else he kept. Erling Haaland extremely quiet and kept it all on lock, and that was without his main centre-back partner, who's been stupendous again all season as well. So I think it's probably a case of Liverpool being a better defence rather than City struggling as well. Arsenal really good projected goals over the next few, as with Liverpool, so Salah and Saka definitely going to be locks on the wild card. Chelsea as well also fall into that bracket, like I spoke about, the decent fixtures as well. Obviously great captaincy potential, as we saw with the betting data, really high projected goals from the betting market for Southampton away for Chelsea. So I do think Cole Palmer will be arguably the best captaincy option over the next few weeks. And going forward, having Salah, Saka and Palmer, you're probably not going to be short of the best captaincy option every single week, to be honest. That's how good these options really are. Spurs have a decent set, but I don't think there's any kind of real attackers standing out for me personally right at this moment. Same with Newcastle as well, they are struggling. Brighton have some decent fixtures coming up, so João Pedro, Matoma could be decent shouts as well on the wild card. Ollie Watkins maybe as well for match day 14, 15 and 16, but after that it does really fall off. But Bournemouth are the team I'm probably, if I was to invest in any kind of these mid-table-ish sides, would be their attack as well. Obviously, you've got Cliver, Semenyo, and Evan Nielsen, all decent options. And in 15, of course, they do take on Ipswich. That was enough of the data. Let's go and take a look at how this wildcard team is lined up for game week 14. Wasting no time, let's dive into this wildcard draft for game week 14. Starting off first with our goalkeeper picks. I feel obviously if you watched the last section and heard me speak quite fondly around Chelsea, their decent fixture run, as we saw with the 11-5 data as well, looking pretty good over the next 5 for clean sheet percentage chances. Southampton away in game week 14 as well, a cracking fixture considering their poor start to the Premier League season. We've obviously got Fabianski as well as the backup goalkeeper if we do want to play him, but I imagine most weeks we are going to be looking at Sanchez. Let's head on then. Let's look into that back line. First off, we're going to start off with Virgil van Dijk. In this draft, I did have enough to go to Trent Alexander-Arnold, of course, if I wanted to make that move. However, I've gone for Virg because I do feel like Trent is probably going to still see a little bit of rotation. He did come off a little bit early. Obviously, Liverpool have Champions League games. I still believe they're in the Carabao Cup, if my mind is not mistaken, as well. So, there is still going to probably be a little bit of rotation just because of how many games are coming up quick and fast for Liverpool. And I feel like Virgil isn't really going to miss any, or of course get those early substitutions as well. I think he's been extremely unfortunate so far this season as well, not to actually get himself a goal. He could have easily came away with a hat-trick in the Manchester City game as well. And I do think the way that bonus has potentially shifted a little bit, I do think if he puts in more impressive performances like that, he could be an absolute magnet for bonus points going forward as well. Obviously as well, Conor Bradley's probably going to be back in around 4 to 5 weeks, I do believe. So he's going to miss quite a lot of the festive periods. So obviously that is a big advantage for Trent. But they obviously slotted Kwanzaa in there and he looks pretty comfortable, to be honest. He didn't obviously make any mistakes. So maybe that's going to be the plan for Slot going forward as well, where Virgil, you do feel, is probably going to play 90 minutes most weeks. Then we move on to 8 Nuri as our next defender. Of course, the next 4 fixtures for Wolves are pretty decent. Following on from that, though, they do go on a pretty horrific run, and that probably would be the period where I would be looking at other cheap replacement defenders. That's kind of the plan with this side, is going to be just kind of rotating around those cheap defenders every single week, just kind of mixing around them a little bit. Then we've got Gabriel, who obviously did go off at half-time in the game against West Ham with concussion after getting absolutely bonked on the head by Fabianski. So he might actually miss this game, which could be a big blow for Arsenal. But I do believe he should be okay. Obviously, we'll have to wait for the Arteta press conference regarding that one. Of course, if you did want to make the switch, there's also Timber and, of course, Saliba as well. But I do feel for the set-piece threats, I think going for Gabriel would be absolutely phenomenal. As well, we saw with the 11-5 data, Arsenal over the next 5 weeks are fancied to be one of the best defences in the league. He's an absolute monster from set pieces as well so far this season. I know I'm usually kind of a little bit hesitant on that, like, oh, they won't score that many, but it seems like the set pieces are solely focused on him this season. Very similar to what Liverpool are doing with Van Dijk, but the levels that Gabriel is at compared to Van Dijk at the moment is just astronomical. Managing to pick up 9 points despite only getting himself a goal and only playing 45 minutes is absolutely ridiculous as well. So maybe a little bit of tweaking with the 4.5 million on the bench. Maybe have somebody that does have a decent fixture this week rather than having to rely on Lewis Hall. But Newcastle's fixtures post-Liverpool game are pretty decent as well, so could be a decent option. Of course, if you want to change the goalkeeper around, maybe put Verbergen in goal, you could have a Colwell in there so you wouldn't have to worry about the Gabriel. That could potentially be something as well. And then the final one, I've just left Greaves in there because that's who's in my team, but it's just realistically going to be like a 4 or a 4.1 million slot for that final one, so you can go and put anybody you want in there for me personally. Let's head on then. Let's move into the midfield. First off, we're going to start off with Jarrod Bowen. The next 5 fixtures for West Ham coming up are stupendous, but of course Jarrod Bowen's underlying data isn't great. And anybody that knows this channel knows that I'm a very, very big fan of Jarrod Bowen, but his underlying data, there is no getting around it. It hasn't been great. West Ham haven't been great overall, to be honest, as a side, but maybe this good run of 5 fixtures where they are playing 3 of the worst teams for XG conceded, by the way, could be the point that obviously breeds that data coming in. You know, the forms, breeding the good performances, breeding the data could be the difference over that, and maybe his data after these 5 game weeks will look a lot better. Of course, he is potentially on penalties as well when Paquetá isn't on the pitch. So that's a little bit of a bonus considering we might have some rotation over the next few weeks as well. I think he's pretty solid in terms of his minutes as well, which is always decent to see. So I think if I wasn't a wild card, I probably would take a gamble on him. Let's move on then. Let's move into the midfield. I mean, these 3 players are going to be essential for me going forward over the next few weeks. Cole Palmer for captaincy this week as well. We saw with the projected goal numbers from the betting markets that, you know, Chelsea are the second favourites. I think they should probably be top come the close of play as well. I imagine Manchester City will take a little bit of a downtick from the betting markets. 0.71 goal involvement per 90. We saw with the projected goal numbers as well, not only for Palmer, but for Saka and Salah as well. Really, really decent over the next few weeks. And that is why I am extremely bullish on all of these options. Cole Palmer is a very, very special player and absolutely whammed one in the top corner at the weekend, and it was just delightful. He is honestly brilliant. If he usually gets a goal, he's probably going to get bonus as well because of the way he plays. He's pretty much a BPS magnet as well, and that is exactly what we want to see. Saka has been in an incredible vein of form. I believe it's now 3 goals and 4 assists within the past 5 game weeks. Obviously had a great performance in the Champions League as well to go with that. 0.77 expected goal involvement per 90 from him so far this season. Another double-digit haul. Could have even got himself more if he didn't give away, obviously, the penalty to Martin Odegaard as well. I think this United fixture, with the injuries and suspensions that they've got, will actually be a pretty decent fixture for him on paper, to be honest. Obviously, they've got no Martinez, no Kobe Mainoo. They're both suspended as well, so I think this could be an absolute plum fixture for Saka. I think a lot of people are probably overestimating Manchester United. Like I said, I watched that game and I just wasn't impressed with them. I think Everton made them look better. Everton gifted them 3 goals, really, to be honest. So I think, you know, Manchester United, a little bit fortunate. They're coming up against a well-oiled side with Martin Odegaard obviously back as well. And I think there'll be a lot more of a dangerous proposition. Let's move on then to Mohamed Salah. I mean, this guy is insane at the moment and genuinely could also be a decent captaincy option. Like I said, Newcastle are struggling at the moment, genuinely struggling to find any sort of form, so he could also be a decent captaincy option if you did just want to leave it on him. I do imagine there's probably going to be quite a close split between Palmer and Salah this week. I imagine Palmer's going to slightly edge it just because people will see Southampton, but I imagine Salah's effective ownership is probably going to be close to 90. It could even still be plus 100%, maybe with some inactive teams and stuff like that. Of course, his underlying data is astronomical, 0.91 expected goal involvement per 90. He's probably been a little bit fortunate over the past few weeks continuing to pick up penalties, but that's why you have penalty takers in the side, because the top teams, because they attack more, have a higher probability of getting those penalties, so getting the penalty takers makes complete sense in that regard, doesn't it? So yeah, Salah, phenomenal. Another double-digit haul. I believe that's now 9 out of the 13 game weeks he's got double-digit hauls. Honestly, unheard of stuff. I think his BPS as well is almost like he's getting into the top 10. I think he's close to being in the top 5 for BPS for the whole season. And it's what, game week 14? That's how much of this guy has been a joke. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Mohamed Salah, as you can tell there. Rodgers on the bench. Villa do have a nice set of fixtures. Again, he's still playing fairly okay minutes, and there's nobody around that price point that is really whetting the appetite for me. I've had a few people suggest maybe Enzo Fernandez, but if you look at his underlying data, a bit niche. Genuinely a bit niche. There's not anything I'm absolutely dying to bring him in, but if you wanted to go for it, I'd go for it. But let's move on into the forwards. We're going to start off with João Pedro. We saw from the 11FI data that Brighton's next few fixtures are looking pretty decent for projected goals. Obviously, they play a newly promoted Leicester, I believe, in game week 15 at the weekend as well. So pretty decent fixture. Again, his underlying data is pretty sharp. 0.68 goal involvement per 90 is pretty decent. I do imagine there'll probably be a little bit of a dip off, obviously with him now playing more and more minutes, but still a decent option within that cheap striker bracket. Cunha for the next 4 feels like a man you've got to have, with Wolves having some pretty decent fixtures, like I said, over that next 4 periods. He's probably been a little bit fortunate in terms of some of the points that he's been picking up, has been scoring some absolute low XG screamers, but I still feel the way that he plays for that Wolves side, he is the talisman. He genuinely is. We're still waiting for Wolves to get a penalty as well. That will be the big deciding factor as well, going maybe when Wolves have another decent run a little bit later on in the season, whether or not we do go and pick him back up, because if he is on penalties, he will be an absolute monster as well. And then finally, it is going to be Nicholas Jackson. The lad genuinely can't stop scoring this season. He could have got himself another goal as well at the weekend. That's how good he's looked at the moment, to be honest. It's a completely revolutionised Jackson from last season. He was all about underlying data, not really any goals. This season, he's found his shooting boots. Obviously started, putting in decent performances, picking up goals, picking up FPL points as well, which is making him an option. Of course, the only problem that we do have with Jackson is the fact that he is on 4 yellow cards. If he does go and pick up another one, it does mean that, of course, he will be suspended for 1 game. And that's probably not ideal with some decent fixtures coming up for Chelsea. But at least you will get the Southampton away fixture for him. I know he's a very, very popular asset, not only in terms of just the populace of the game, but of course in terms of content creators as well, because we are seeing that he is putting the goals in, is putting the data in as well, and Chelsea, like I said, with that 11FI data, are looking stupendous. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, that was the wildcard team. Let me know what you think of it down in the comments section below. Of course, like I said, I will be live for the deadline around 2:30 tomorrow, so make sure you're heading over to that one. But thank you very much for watching today, ladies and gentlemen, and good luck in game week 14.